This afternoon, you're listening to the Todd LaBorwit Show, Real Estate Radio and Sound Broadcast Network, WRC 1260 AM. I'm your host, Todd LaBorwit, and this segment is brought to you by Snow Goose Homes, LLC, our preferred partner for when you need to sell your home or your land. They have the cash in the bank account in as little as 5 business days. And in the studio with me now is Neal Greene. He's a specialized real estate agent, we should say, with Avery Hess Realtors. He's licensed in Maryland and Virginia. Welcome to the studio, Neal.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Now, you come from a different background from a lot of real estate agents that we've spoken to on previous shows. You deal with a lot of Freddie Mac foreclosures.
Correct.
Now, before everyone runs out and says, I'm looking for a foreclosure, I need to get in touch with this guy, Neal Greene, you have a lot of information, per se,
correct,
for our listeners to
correct.
What they need to know before they start tackling these foreclosures.
Correct.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I would tell anybody who's looking for a house, when somebody says to me, I want to buy a foreclosure, my first question is why? And I think a lot of people think that they're a good deal, and some of them are, some of them aren't. So you need to look for the house you want. If it's a foreclosure, great. If it's not, that's good too. I wouldn't look just for a foreclosure.
But you were mentioning before on the show, talking about a lot of people will go in and buy a $300,000 foreclosure thinking they got a steal, and it will actually be worth like $350,000, but they got to put $70,000 into it, and it blows up on them.
And a lot of people don't realize that. They'll go into a project and they think they can buy a house for $300,000, fix it up for $10,000, and once they get into it, they find out it's going to cost a lot more. So what I would say to somebody is know what you're getting yourself into before you get into it, because you can end up upside down if you don't.
Okay. So we have everyone that's out there we're probably piquing their interest, like, oh, this is something I would love to do.
Right.
Now, do they go to the courthouse? Do they go to, what's the process? What's the procedure for, let's talk about Maryland, because there's a lot of foreclosures in Maryland, and there's not a lot of foreclosures in Virginia,
Correct.
I assume.
Correct.
Okay. And do you know the reason why?
It's basically a longer process in Maryland. So the ones that would have been going through the process a year or so ago are now coming through in Maryland.
Perfect. So in Maryland, walk me through, for our listeners, what it's like.
Most of them are listed on a multiple listing service just like any other property is. So you're going to find it on whatever your favorite website is. It's going to be on the multiple listing service. It really depends upon who the seller is. Freddie Mac, everything is done very similarly to the way it's done with a traditional sale. With HUD properties, it's very different. So, again, each one's going to have a different situation as to how you go about buying it.
So what advice do you have to protect the listeners? Like, get in touch with you, for one.
Correct. Of course.
But, do you actually work with Freddie Mac?
Yes.
And you have all their listings?
I don't have all of them. We do have a lot of them. And, again, look at each individual house. Just like any other aspect of life, each one's going to be different. So some are going to be in great condition. Some are going to need a lot of work. The one thing to remember is that they're always sold as is. So a lot of people will write an offer on a house and then want repairs after they do the home inspection or after they think about it. The biggest difference is that these houses are sold as is. So you need to be prepared to put some money into the house. And if you don't need to put money into it, great.
Perfect. Now, for our listeners, do they come to you with their own real estate agent, or do they come to you and have you represent them on both sides? Because I think Maryland, it's not allowed anymore.
In Maryland, I, as a real estate agent, cannot represent both parties. My company can. I'm working a lot with the sellers. So when I get calls, I refer them off to other agents in my office. But a lot of the buyers come to me via other real estate agents. So any real estate agent who's licensed in Maryland can show the house and can send me an offer on the house and can sell it.
Okay. So. Now let's get to the nitty gritty. You came highly recommended through Justin Pierce with Snow Goose Homes. and he's a high integrity guy. We all know him.
I know that.
And your personal interest is selling these homes. What's the difference between, like, if you're listing the house that's worth $350 and you're listing it for $300,000, knowing it's worth $350? Do you know how much work needs to go into this, or it's a gunshot and hey, once you buy it, it's your problem? Or
we have an idea just from doing this for a length of time. I can look at a house and have a good idea as to what it's going to need, but again, any house is going to have something that might be wrong with it that you can't see. So a lot of times you will know what's wrong, or you'll have an idea what's wrong, but a lot of times you're going to find something that you didn't expect.
Okay.
So.
Well, by the way, if you're just tuning in, I have with me Neal Greene. He's a real estate agent with Avery Hess Realtors, but a unique real estate agent specializing in foreclosed home listings through Freddie Mac. And I'm your host, Todd LaBorwit, and you're listening to Salem Broadcast Network, WRC 1260 AM. Now, Neal, sorry for all the hard questions. This is just fascinating to me. How do you come up with the price that the house should be sold for? Is that the bank? Is that you?
It's a combination of both. We do something called a BPO, which is a broker price opinion. It's similar to an appraisal, but it's not nearly as detailed. So we're going to look at what other houses are selling for in that neighborhood and what other houses are listed for, and then we make a recommendation to the bank depending upon the condition of the house. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. Just like a traditional seller. Sometimes they listen to us, sometimes they don't. So obviously they're looking to get as much for the house as possible. And they also understand that the buyer's looking to pay as little for it as possible. So we recommend it to them, the price, but the ultimate decision is up to them, just like it is with any other seller.
But when you say as is, and someone comes in, they put a contract offer on the house, and you say, okay, they do a home inspection. If it's $10,000 of improvements or $70,000, they're done. They're stuck. That's their deposit.
No, if they're allowed to do a home inspection, and if they don't like what they find, they can get their money back.
Do they sometimes try to renegotiate?
People try that all the time, yes.
It doesn't work, does it?
Most of the time it doesn't work. It depends upon how much demand there is for the house. If a lot of people wanted the house, it's probably not going to work. If the house is not a really popular house, it might. Everybody's goal is to get the house sold, so it's a lot more personal than a lot of people would think, but they're not going to go make little minuscule repairs that don't need to be made.
Do people find diamonds in the rough?
Not as much anymore as they used to. There are some. It's tough to do because once they get into the multiple listing service, you're going to end up with a lot of people bidding on it. So it might be a diamond in the rough, but a lot of the houses actually sell for more than they're listed for. So you might think you found a good deal, and you end up having to pay a lot more than the list price for it, and that's happening a lot lately.
Wow. Now, we were talking before about prices are starting to come down, and it's happening all over.
Correct.
What's your take on that?
About the last 6 months or so, prices have come down and the market slowed. 2013 was great. Prices went up. The first few months of 2014, prices went up. In a lot of areas, they have leveled off or come down a little bit. And, as a seller, whether you're a bank or whether you're a traditional seller, it's something that unfortunately can't be changed. And if you're buying, hey, great, you can pay less for a house than you would have a few months ago. If you're selling, you might not be as happy as the buyer would be.
Wow. What I'd like to offer you, our listeners, is the opportunity to get in touch with Neal Greene, who's a real estate agent with Avery Hess Realtors. And the biggest thing is for foreclosure homes, and he's going to be your to-go person. Call or text me at 301-467-8444. That number again is 301-467-8444. Now, Neal, let's talk about Justin. He's not in the room right now.
But he can hear us.
He can hear us. He'll be hearing us later. But he's with Snow Goose Homes, and he buys houses that are in distress and gives people cash right away.
Correct.
And they have the money in the bank within 5 business days, and he's a great guy.
Correct.
And he also writes for the Washington Post.
Correct.
Have you guys worked in the past? Have you seen his projects?
I've seen many of them. We've worked probably for about 3-4 years right now, and he does great work. He uses licensed contractors. His houses look great. I think with him, it's more about giving somebody a good house than just making money off of it.
And do you relist them for him, or?
In Maryland, yeah. I do relist his houses in Maryland, and, I found him some in Maryland, some he's found himself, so.
What's it like relisting his houses? Because a lot of people are worried about these people that flip houses because they're worried about the workmanship.
Well, he uses licensed contractors first off, so everything's got to be licensed. Everything's got to be approved by the county or whatever municipality it is.
So he does everything above par.
Correct,
and there's recourse with the builder.
Correct, and then if you do a home inspection and the inspector notes something, he's going to go back and make repairs. Again, with him, it's about making sure the house is right, not just making money off of it.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for sharing that with us. We love to get the inside scoop on our preferred partners because we love them internally. You get to see us work outside.